Based violence, or GBV, remains one of the most urgent human rights issues on the African continent, with millions of women and girls affected in parts of East and Southern Africa. Studies show that more than 4 in 10 women will experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. Yet the problem is here. Despite legal frameworks like the Maputo Protocol, survivors still struggle to access justice. Systematic failures run deep in many African countries, with weak police responses and delayed prosecutions in cases disappearing from court rolls and inadequate survivor support. Today, we're going to be speaking about the systematic barriers, examining why justice remains out of reach for so many survivors across the continent. And Mary Izobo is joining us on the show, Advocacy Programme Manager at the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. It's been a while, Mary. Welcome back on the Move.
Hi, Ben. It's so nice to see you again. Indeed, it's been a while. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Let's talk a little bit about this one. It's important that we centralize justice around GBV, right? Because it's not only the fact that survivors and victims struggle from the physical harms of gender-based violence, their emotional repercussions of gender-based violence, but there's also survivor victimhood from a justice perspective.
Thank you so much. I mean, I would start by saying that gender-based violence is not just something that happens personally. It's not a personal tragedy. It's a systemic failure, like you had highlighted, whether it's from mishandling at the police level or the slow, costly judicial processes, cultural norms, family pressure. I think we can go on and on, right? And so when survivors cannot access justice, whether it's from the police station to the courtroom, there are persistent gaps and that leave survivors unprotected, where perpetrators are held unaccountable and communities do not necessarily feel safe. And so I would say that the solutions are known, right? But it starts from whether it's the political will of member states, or it's the resourcing, or the paradigm shift. So when it comes to slow, costly judicial process, it's a lot, right? So even when cases make it to the courts, survivors usually face long years delayed, repeated adjournments, and mounting costs for transport, because even a girl or a child or a girl or a woman who has faced sexual violence is unable to go to court, right? Because of it can be onerous in terms of transport costs and even taking time away from work. Because imagine telling your employer, oh, I have to go to court because of A and B. And as a result, many tend to lose hope and they tend to withdraw their cases. But I would say that the impact that it has on survivors, as you rightly highlighted, is the fact that perpetrators continue to exploit delays to intimidate or harm survivors. In South Africa, where even some of the women are being killed in front of the courtrooms, survivors lose their jobs. There is the constant delay. The dockets get missing. You don't even know where it is. And survivors in even communities lose faith in the justice system, where once a girl is raped or a woman is raped, you ask her to go to the police station. She says she's not going because she feels like nothing's going to happen, because oftentimes we think it's a family matter. Even when you go to the police station for the first time, they say to you, go home, it's a family matter, go try resolve it. Or sometimes even the police officers ask questions like, what were you wearing? I mean, I always just never understand the question.
Yeah.
What are you wearing? Or what did you say? What did you say to the man when he made advances at you? Why were you not polite? But in that instance, I don't think a woman or a girl is thinking about being polite, because she's being threatened, right? Her safety and security is being threatened. And in that moment, is either the flight or fight mode that comes up. So, I mean, go ahead.
Yes,
go ahead.
No, keep going, Mary.
And so you see the questions. I always say that why it happens in terms of gender-based violence is because we do not prioritize SGBV cases. We always put them at the bottom of the barrel, because it's like, oh, we've normalized SGBV, right? I come and I report a case and it's just like, anyway, go next. You could also talk about paper-based systems. I always go to court and sometimes I never understand why we still have paper filing, where I can go or the court can burn down and all of those papers are gone in like 2 seconds. And so it's very important that we actually move to digital filing. We talk about AI, but how are we trying to use technology, right, to advance reporting when it comes to cases?
Yeah.
And then even defense lawyers, they try to exploit the loopholes and try to say things around, but you said this the first time, now you're saying another thing. But you never understand that when it happens, it's a shock to your system. You never remain the same. So in as much as we try to, at CSVR, we try to do what is called, our approach is very survivor-centered. It's very trauma-informed to make sure that at the heart of the work that we do, the victim comes first, right? What do they want? Sometimes you take them.
Mary, the term justice itself can mean a lot of things to a lot of individuals. And we look at it at a very one-dimensional way, where a perpetrator, justice is only served if they end up in jail. Is there more to this term justice? What does it encompass? And, how exactly can we define this term justice and its failures as well?
Justice is not a one-size-fits-all, right? And that's why I go back to the survivor trauma informed, right? What I may term justice may not be what another woman terms justice. And I'll give an example. For me, justice may mean healing emotionally, right? How do I heal from the process? I don't want to take my perpetrator to court. I don't want to have to be re-traumatized, because one thing the court processes does, and we do not know, is that it re-traumatizes victims, where the judges or the defense lawyers or the lawyers will say your story again, repeat your story. What did you say the first time? So now me going again and saying the story over and over again is re-traumatizing me, because I have to sit with my feelings in trying to explain how I feel. And so for me, I just want to heal. I just want the mental health and psychosocial support where I want to go to therapy and I want to heal, right? Another justice for somebody else may mean the person must go to court and go to jail, and they will be jailed for life or how many years it is. Justice for somebody else could also mean just acknowledge the fact that you did harm to me. Acknowledgement, right? Acknowledge that you did A, you did B, and I would be at peace with myself. I will not think that I'm crazy, because sometimes, the perpetrators of this crime would deny it flat out to your eyes. I never touched you. I never came anywhere close to you. And you're wondering, like, is this a joke? Like, it was you. But it's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about, right? And so sometimes justice for another person could just mean owning up and acknowledging the fact that you hurt me and you probably will not do it again. So justice to every woman just means different things, because it's very context specific. It's very peculiar to each woman as to how she wants to heal. But I think at the heart of it is healing. We often neglect the mental health and psychosocial support. And even I would say that since justice already starts from the police station, because I would say that when survivors report GBV, the first gatekeeper is the police, right? Because the entire justice chain collapses if that gate fails, whether it's true the police not believing the victim or the survivor, or is minimizing, but he just touched your breasts.
Yeah.
Or, but he just kissed you on your cheek, or he just kissed your lips.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. Or whether it's poor evidence handling, where I come to court and I go to the police station and say, a woman says she's been raped, and they say, open your vagina, I want to see. It is, oh God.
Yeah, it's actually like re-traumatizing when you actually make those examples there, Mary. We'll continue to find out how we can actually better modernize our justice system to deal with the gender-based violence issues. It seems like there is a systematic infrastructural and maybe a training issue here that we need to deal with when it comes to the justice system in dealing with the gender-based violence. We'll continue as we carry on with our GBV focus. We're speaking to Mary Izobo today, an Advocacy Programme Manager at the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. We'll continue this conversation after our break. Stay with us right here on Channel Africa. If you want to engage with us, remember, give us your thoughts on +276 3406 9126. How do you think the justice system in our African countries is doing when it comes with the dealing with gender-based violence?
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Bina l'export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama.
We continue with our series of conversations around gender-based violence here on Channel Africa. And today we're speaking about the systematic barriers that, are stopping a lot of victims of gender-based violence from accessing the justice that is necessary. But also, we're going to have a conversation about the reforms that are needed to change this particular reality. Mary Izobo, who is an Advocacy Programme Manager at the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation, continues to join us on the line. Many a times we hear about gender-based violence cases, be it sexual, physical, or any other form of gender-based violence, Mary. And one that is a constant reality is the victims going to court with the perpetrator also in court, and then the case being put out because there wasn't enough evidence. And this automatically to, the rest of the communities, the rest of the people is seen as translated as this victim is lying or this perpetrator didn't do this particular thing. It is quite a worrying trend, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. Let's start with what I had mentioned before, that even when cases make it to court, right? There is the fact that the perpetrator is the survivor is lying. Sometimes some even call it the witch hunt. This man is doing really well and this girl is trying to bring him down with her allegations. And then the survivors face long years delays. They face adjournments where maybe the perpetrator doesn't show up in court. Complete disregard, for the justice system. And we also look at the victim as well, where, maybe she might not even be able to pay transport to the court or even time away from work. And so you realize that it does have impact on survivors, whether they say they're lying, whether they face long years, where in the case where they do not say they're lying, and there's a bit more evidence, then they face years of long delays, they face repeated adjournments, and some of them, if they're in the rural areas and they do not have a court, like a big court, then they have to travel long distances, maybe an hour, 2 hours, just to attend this case, to attend the court processes, right? The timelines for GBV cases, if you look at it in general, it's about 2 to 5 years.
Wow.
Leaving survivors in prolonged contact with perpetrators. Imagine for 2 to 5 years, every day I go to court and then I have to see my perpetrator, right? The constant stress, and you're not even providing me with mental health and psychosocial support. You're just leaving me. So every day I go to court, I'm traumatized, I go home, come back every day. We need to really think about the trauma-informed, survivor-centered approaches where the best interest of the victim or the survivor matters, right? Even coordination. You have police officers, prosecutors, courts who operate in silos. Everybody's just working on their own. Evidence goes missing. Witnesses are not properly briefed. Survivors have to retell their stories. There's also the victim fatigue, right? Where I have to constantly go, now I'm frustrated. Now I'm scared because now the perpetrator is coming to my family house, is trying to threaten me like, look, if you go again and talk, or even where you have witnesses, of course, it's not every time you have witnesses, right? Because sexual acts usually happen in private. And so when you have circumstantial, like when you have circumstantial evidences, then it's then the witnesses are being threatened. Like, if you go and you testify against me, you'll never see your family again, or I'm going to kill you. It just continues to fuel this impunity, where it's now like It's okay. It's okay to violate a
Yeah.
woman and go scot-free.
Mary,
Nothing's going to happen.
sure, you spoke about a victim centered approach. I'm not referencing that term you used, victim, but it's something that alludes to that. Could you elaborate on how we would actually centralize the interests of the victim in the justice system?
So in this case, when you talk about victim, victim-centered or trauma-informed approach, is that you're putting the victim at the heart of what you do. And I'll give an example. Like we had mentioned before, when a victim or a survivor experiences sexual-based violence, it differs from everybody. So I may not want to go to court. I may not have the mental energy every day to go to court and see my perpetrator. I may just want healing. So at the end of the day, what does the victim want? That is the question, and that should be at the heart. Does the victim want healing? Does the victim want the perpetrator to go to court? Does the victim want the perpetrator to say the truth, acknowledge the wrong, and apologize? We must do what the victim wants. And so let's use the one that the victim has to go to court every day, or not every day. I mean, every time the victim is called to court. And it takes 2 to 5 years. So as the victim, he or she may start with, I want my perpetrator to be jailed. And so every day or every time, I'm going to court. I'm going to court. And then one day I realize I don't want to do this anymore. I want to move on. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to chase a political career. I want this to end, right? In that instance, when the victim says to the lawyer or to the court system, I don't want to do this anymore, immediately that must stop. You can't start forcing the victim and start to saying, oh no, but you started this case, you have to finish it. Nah, it doesn't work that way. If the victim says, I don't want to continue, I've done this for 2 years and this is going to take 5 years and I don't want to do this anymore, respect the victim and let it go. Let her go, build her life, maybe attend therapy and keep it moving. And then the state can continue to to prosecute the perpetrator in the absence of the victim or the survivor, because all of the evidence presented, I've presented, for example, the swab from the rape, whatever, I've presented all of the evidence. So why do I need to be there? Because SGBV is a criminal matter. So what that means is that even without the victim being there, the matter can still be pursued. So putting the victim at the heart means that you're doing what the victim wants or thinks it is best for that victim at that particular time, and not what the court thinks or what Ben thinks or Palesa thinks or what Mary thinks.
You mentioned obviously various types of justice that exist, but if we look at judicial justice in particular, there are so many people in place for that system: the police, the courts, the administrators, even those who do the swab, so it's medical personnel as well. And it seems like there's a huge lack of training when it comes to gender-based violence cases. This is a system that is meant to fight crime, but it seems like gender-based violence is not seen as something that is at the heart of crime. So there's a huge lack of understanding around gender-based violence, even within our judicial system. What needs to be done about that?
One of the most critical gaps, like you rightly mentioned, Palesa, in our GBV response systems is the shortage of professionals. And even if you have the professionals, because we think we have them, right? But we don't. That's the thing. So it's one thing to have them and they're not trained, but it's one thing to also not have them, right? And so having professionals that are trained to engage with survivors in a trauma-informed, survivor-centered way. I always add trauma-informed, survivor-centered way, and I'm sure you already know why, is putting the victim, whatever is in the best interest of the victim. And so without a proper understanding of the psychological, of the emotional, the behavioral impact, because it's not just physical, right? So you could violate a woman, you could violate a man. It's not just physical. There is that emotional, there is that behavioral. Sometimes it actually changes the behavioral pattern of a woman where she now becomes very violent. You talk to her, you even say hello, she's already thinking you're about to sexually assault me, right? Is that whether it's from the police officers to the prosecutors to the judges, oftentimes they unintentionally, and I want to say intentionally, because that would be unfair and that would be making a sweeping statement. Sometimes it's unintentional, right? When you ask questions, even as parents at home, even as friends, if a friend comes to you, Palesa or Ben, and say, look, I've been sexually violated, what kind of questions do you ask? Do you say, oh, how did it happen? Do you want to go into details? Tell me. And, sometimes some people are even smiling and giggling. And,
Yeah.
I mean, you're unintentionally re-traumatizing the survivor, whether it's through insensitive questioning, whether it's through disbelief, you're raising your eyebrows, or you're even victim blaming, like asking the questions. And so I would say to address these issues requires more than just training, because some people just think we train and that's it. But no, it actually demands a systemic reform, right? So we need we need a continuous professional development. So it's not a one-time, like some police officers will say, oh, I've gotten a training in 1984. And this is 2025. It has to, because the times are changing, right? There are now different forms of SGBV, where even in the, you did mention the Maputo Protocol, Palesa, but there is a new convention, which is the Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls.
All right, Mary, we do need to wrap up the conversation. We've run out of time. I know there's so many other factors that come into play when we have this particular conversation, but we'll have to leave it there. As usual, it's always a pleasure to speak to you, and thank you so much for joining us in this discussion.
Thank you so much, Palesa and Ben, and you have a good day.
That's the Advocacy Programme Manager at the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation, Mary Izobo, speaking about some of the systematic barriers that we face here on the African continent when it comes to finding justice for gender-based violence.
Hey, join our On the Move poll. We're going to put it up on our X handle. Remember, it's a very sensitive issue, so we'd like to get your thoughts on this one. What's the biggest barrier to justice for GBV survivors? We're giving you 4 options there. First one being weak police response. Second option, slow courts. Third option is the poor survivor support, while the fourth option is cultural stigma. Go to our @Channel Africa 1 handle and participate in that poll. Let's